Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a tier list video. One of my subscribers sent me this. They found it on Twitter and without further ado I'm just going to jump into it. The only thing that I'm going to preface is I'm putting the link to this tier list in the description if you want to do it yourself. But I kind of sorted them out in I have platformers, then racers, then the party games, and then advertisements and betas. But when you just go to the base one, when you first click it, they're all mixed up with no order at all. Anyway, here we go. Crash Bandicoot 1, 1996. Right off the bat, first A rank. This one, low poly, they were pushing the PS1 to its limits with Crash, and he just looks great for 1996. He looks awesome. Mario 64 came out the same year, so just think about that. And whenever I have the chance in future installments of games to unlock a retro skin of Crash, I always jump on it because I have nostalgia for the low poly look. And then moving on, we have Crash Bandicoot 2, which is getting an A rank because it's almost identical to Crash 1, just a little more polished. This tier list didn't have Crash Warped, I'm assuming because it's very close to Crash 2, but Crash 2 is close to Crash 1, but anyway, so if there was a 3, he would be an A rank as well. And then we have the Insane Trilogy, which will be our first S rank. There's not much to say about why he gets S rank. Just looking at him, you can kind of already tell. He took everything from original Crash and they modernized it, and he still kept the feel and look of original Crash. They didn't try and make him look too wild. He just looks like Crash. And look at that, back-to-back S ranks. Crash Bandicoot 4 is also going to get an S rank from me. The only issue that I have with this model is the colors aren't as deep as they are in Crash Bandicoot 1 and the original trilogy pretty much. Now that it's been released on PC, there is a mod to make his jeans darker and his fur darker orange. So he's got dark orange fur and dark blue jeans, and they make his shoes match the original color scheme, and it looks pretty wild. Unfortunately, I don't have the PC version, so I can't play it like that, but I've seen videos on YouTube, and it's pretty cool. So then we move on to the Wrath of Cortex, and this is getting our first D. Crash the Wrath of Cortex tried? See, 1996 Crash, Naughty Dog tried and pushed to the limits, and we've got a pretty good Crash. But then, Traveler's Tales, there was if I remember correctly, they had a bunch more planned. They ran out of time, and unfortunately it shows. All of the models from Crash Wrath of Cortex were pretty gross looking. They were trying to do what they couldn't do. Engine looks gross, Cortex looks gross, Tiny, Dingodile, Entropy, they all look really hideous. And without rambling too much, I just think that Wrath of Cortex Crash looks really gross. And we move on to Crash Twinsanity. This one is getting a solid mid-tier from me, because Twinsanity, they had the acapella sound, and the whole game itself felt more cartoony. And not that I dislike cartoony, I like cartoony, but this they changed his appearance a little too much for me, and he acted a little more bizarre. I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate because everyone likes Twinsanity and they put them all up in S tier. But I'm not saying the game was bad by any means. I enjoyed the game a lot. And yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to say about that. And then we move on to Crash of the Titans. and this one is getting a C rank. They made him way too stubby. His hands got much larger so he could perform his melee attacks, and he doesn't look like if you'd never seen Crash Bandicoot before and this was your first look at Crash Bandicoot. He looks too drastically different from Crash to me, so he gets a C tier. And then we move on to Mind Over Mutant. Mind Over Mutant Crash is up in the mid tier because they took Crash of the Titans Crash and they made him taller. He looks more like Crash to me. His ears were changed, his snout was changed, even his color scheme was changed a little bit. The only thing that he's really missing to make him Crash is his hands are still a little too big because of the melee attacks and he doesn't have his gloves. But overall, this one looks much more like Crash than that one to me. And now we're moving on to the final platformer in this list. This is Skylanders Imaginators Crash. He looks like a Tasmanian devil. And just like I said with B tier Twinsanity, I'm also putting him up here. I like the cartoony style they're going for. He just looks a little too wild to me. Like he looks like he's on drugs or something. But I've never played this game, but I watched the playthrough on YouTube, and it looked neat. I will give him that. And he had like TNT attack. He would throw the TNT crates, and he had a yo-yo and his bazooka. Everything they knew what they were doing. They were trying to celebrate the anniversary the correct way. This game came out a year after his anniversary, so Imaginators was the actual anniversary for Crash. And now we're moving on to my favorite game, Crash Team Racing. However, having said that, I am giving this a C. It's not quite D trash, but it's not good to look at. Like, I love the game, the controls are great, everything about it's amazing. But I'm not going to argue that this is a good-looking Crash. I always am reminded of Tiny. Let me get a picture of him for you. Yeah, look at this Tiny. This is what I mean when I say the Crash Team Racing models are pretty crappy. His hands are bad. His mouth, like, look at his teeth. It just looks like a giant chunk of white. His arms, his hands, his teeth, everything about this is just like really bad to look at. But it gets a pass to me because you're racing and you're generally not looking at them from the front view. You're always looking at their back. So it gets a pass as far as gameplay wise, but visually it's really gross to look at. A little more about Crash Team Racing. Remember, Dingo Dow didn't even have a tail. Like, their models for racing is pretty bad, but their podium models are much more appropriate, and they look much more like their characters. And now we're moving on to Nitro Fueled. So Crash Team Racing was my favorite game of all time, and now Nitro Fueled is my favorite game of all time because it's Crash Team Racing plus everything else. This picture doesn't give justice to just how good Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled Crash looks, because he's getting an S tier for me. I'm kind of tongue-tied over why I put him up to S tier. I can't really articulate why I think he's S tier. He looks like Insane Trilogy Crash, but a little more crashy, if that makes any sense to anybody. And then we're moving on to the cutscenes from Crash Nitro Kart. When I was younger, when this game first came out, I was in love with this style. It hasn't aged as well as I would have liked, but it's definitely mid-tier at least. I liked how he threw on his little sunglasses and he was playing with his yo-yo in the cutscenes. Back when it first came out and I was playing the game, I would have loved a cartoon in this style. It feels like Jimmy Neutron or Planet Sheen. It looks like passable, like it could be one of those the Barnyard Show or the Madagascar Penguins. It looks like low quality, but at the same time good enough that there could have been a show about it. So it gets a mid-tier for me. And now we're moving on to the last racer. And is it the last racer? Yes. Last racing game, Crash Tag Team Racing. And I really like this model. So much, in fact, that it's getting an A tier from me. It just looks like they went back to the roots and they tried to make the original trilogy Crash just more modernized. They didn't give him tattoos, they didn't change his hands, they didn't give him super long ears or change his color. They just took Crash and they tried to make him modern. So I like that one a lot. And then, I don't know why this tier list has alternate skins and it only has one alternate skin from Tag Team Racing. But this is the Japanese Crash I think they were going for with this. I can't recall 100% what this skin was called. But yeah. This one is pretty bad looking. Like, this is what Japanese Crash is supposed to look like over here next to it's the second suit Crash. And this just looks like Crash with an inflated head, like he got stung by a bee. So he's tempted to give him trash. Yeah, he's D. No, it's a D. It's bad. And then we go to Crash Bash. Crash Bash Crash looks remarkably like the original trilogy Crash, but he's even more low polygon than the original trilogy was. So he gets a mid-tier as well. I'm going to put him right there, mid-tier. See, I don't know how people do their tier list, but I don't really rank within the tier. Like, these are just all S tier to me, all A, all B. I'm not going to go over here and put him there. I'm just putting them in order. One moment. Okay, I'm back. My 18-month-old daughter just ran into the room and was pulling on the wire to the laptop. Anyway, we're back into it. I just did Crash Bash Crash. Okay, now we're going to Crash Boom Bang Crash. It looks to me as if they were trying to take the Crash Twinsanity version of him, but he's very wiry looking. He always has that giant smile on, which he had this smile in Twinsanity as well, but in this game it's just so large and in your face all the time. I'm not even judging this based off of how bad the game was. This Crash just gets trashed here. And now we're actually moving on to the last game, period. Yeah, that's correct. This is the last game. This is Crash on the Run Crash. I'm currently level 19 in it right now. I'm going to post an update video at some point. I'm enjoying this game a lot. This one, to me, it's not as... there's just so many skins in this game that this one just feels like a blank canvas, so they could just throw all these extra things onto him to make the skins all wild looking. I'm not crazy about it completely. He looks okay, but I'm gonna give him he gets a mid-tier as well. And then we move on to the advertisement crashes before we get into the beta crashes. So, Crash Suit Guy, oh my lord, I love Crash Suit Guy. I loved all the commercials from back in the day. I had the PlayStation Underground with the Crash Suit Guy doing funny stuff. He always holds a place in my heart, and he is getting up to the A tier. I actually wanted him as a raceable character in the Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled game. I wanted Crash Suit Guy in that game so bad. And then we move on to Kurashi Bandicoot, the Japanese Crash from Japan, obviously. He looks cracked out of his mind. Those giant eyeballs and little pupils. He's pretty bad. He's not even mid tier. I'm putting him down here. And then we move on to the Skylanders TV series Crash. I have never seen this show. I believe I saw one clip on YouTube of him just speaking with an Australian accent, and it just put me off completely. I can't like place my finger on why I dislike him. Maybe his hair? I really don't know, but he's just off-putting to me. He doesn't feel like Crash. He just looks like some generic Anthro character. So he's going down here in the C tier as well. And now we're moving on to the Crash Bandicoot 2 sneak peek. There's a video. I'm pretty sure it's Tom Kenny who does Spyro and SpongeBob voicing him, and it's really bad. Really, really bad. Like, his model's awful. It's flapping around all crazy. It doesn't really look like Crash. It looks like a Chinese knockoff, so he's getting another trash tier there. And then this Crash was from a PlayStation advertisement. I'm pretty sure this is the same model that was on the picture, the buses. I don't know why they would include this since it's not from any game at all. And it's very obscure. It looks weird to me. It's getting another C tier. And then we're on to Funko Crash. I have never liked Funko Pops ever. They look really weird to me. I hope I don't get a bunch of hate for that. Everyone has their own personal preference. You could like it, I don't care, but I've never liked the way that these look. So that's also getting a D tier from me. And now we're moving on to Crash Landed, also known as My Name is Crash Bandicoot. This game looked like it was going to be so much fun. And they gave Crash the big expressive eyes, and he looked like a straight up cartoon character. I know I keep going back to cartoon character. I did it with him and him. But this looked like a nice fresh start to Crash. And you know what? This is getting an S rank from me. I would have loved to see this game. They had the Bandicoots. They had Dingo Dial was redone. And it just looks stunning to me. And I really wish that they went further with that game. And then this is the Crash Landing from the DS version. And I haven't seen enough of it. And this picture, I don't know if it's doing justice to what it looked like in the game. But it looks so frumpy to me. I don't like it at all. So the console version of Crash Landed gets an S. And the DS version gets a D. Both sides of the spectrum. And then we're moving on to our final Crash Bandicoot. This is Crash on the Run, but it was like the beta, I guess, or they use for advertisements. He has more fur textures. His ears are pointed a little different. And he looks more like Crash than what we got, in my opinion. I actually think he looks a little better than the final version, so this is actually going to get an A tier as well. So that's my ranking. We've got Insane Trilogy, Crash 4, Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, Crash Landed for S tier, and then we've got Crash 1, 2, 3 wasn't included, but he would also be in here, Crash 3, Crash Tag Team Racing, Crash Suit Guy, and Beta on the Run Crash. Then for B tier, we have Twinsanity, Mind Over Mutant, Imaginators, Nitro Kart, Bash, and On the Run. Then for C tier, we have Crash of the Titans, Crash Team Racing, Japanese Crash Suit Guy, Skylanders TV Crash, and PlayStation Advertisement Crash. And then for good old D trash tier, we have nasty looking Wrath of Cortex Crash, weird Japanese Crash skin from CTTR, hideous Boom Bang Crash, repulsive Crash 2 advertisement Crash, Funko Pop Crash, and Crash Landed DS. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you don't agree with my ranking, feel free to let me know what you think in the comment section. As always, I appreciate your views and your comments and all that good stuff, and you guys have a good night. You take care. Bye-bye.